Today I want to talk about a bunch of cool things in Atomfall which I think the Fallout franchise should pinch. First on my list is how most enemies you encounter won't immediately be hostile to you. Unless you're in an area with the trespassing warning, outlaws, druids and protocol soldiers won't immediately try and attack you, instead warning you to keep your distance and trying to avoid a fight where they can. You'll then have what I think of as the Hitman detection meter, which shows as white when you've been noticed but aren't at risk of being attacked, briefly as yellow when the enemy is starting to turn aggressive, and then as red when they actually will try and kill you. Not only is this a nice little mechanic to make it easier to avoid a fight, but it's one that makes sense. Most people aren't bloodthirsty monsters just looking to kill everyone they come across. Not only is this against most folks' morals, even in a post-apocalyptic setting, but it also makes sense that people would logically want to avoid a fight, as every battle is one they could lose and be killed in. And this brings me to Bethesda games, where it's very much become a meme that the weakest of foes will relentlessly seek out the player character, even when they're obviously going to die from doing so. Think of every time you've been playing Fallout 4 as a high-level build decked out in a full suit of Brotherhood T60 power armor, and some rando raider with a pipe pistol charges you. It makes no sense whatsoever for them to be fighting you at that point, yet still they do. By stealing Atomfall's hostility meter, Bethesda could remove this issue from future Fallout games. Make it so that raiders put more of a focus on avoiding a fight with the player character, rather than instantly going full guns blazing. Better yet, make it sort of a sliding scale, where the higher level and better kitted out the player is, the less likely raiders are to engage. Sure, level 1, fresh face and arm with a basic 10mm, every raider out there is going to try their luck, as they'll see you as an easy mark. But once you reach level 50 and have a top tier plasma rifle in hand, well then I think the raider should only try and fight you as a last resort, instead yelling things like, "We don't want any trouble," when you start getting a little too close. This would also go along quite nicely with the direction that Bethesda have been taking raiders in the past couple of games. For ages, raiders have typically just been seen as the human enemies you fight your way through, but in Fallout 4 we had Nuka World, which was a whole DLC that expected you to side with the raiders, and in 76 we have the Crater Gang, who make up one of two sides in Wastelander's questline, which is arguably the most main quest of all questlines in the game. We're getting more humanised raiders with every game, and I want that to keep occurring. Making raiders seem like actual people who are just doing bad things in order to survive in a harsh world feels pretty realistic to me, and can allow for them to sometimes be seen as empathetic figures, rather than just generic video game enemies. By slapping Atomfall's hostility meter onto them, it just adds to this, making them seem more like real people, and less like the generic bots that they all too often are. I said that the hostility meter in Atomfall was much like the detection meter from the Hitman games, and while I'm pinching elements from both games at once, let's do another one. Both Atomfall and Hitman let you sneak up behind enemies and perform a takedown. This is a way to quickly deal with a single target, and I've always found takedowns pretty cool, so I'd love to see them make an appearance in a future Fallout game. Mechanically, I'd want them to be nearly identical to what we see in Atomfall, with the player character just having to get behind the enemy and then press a button in order to get the takedown animation. There are a couple of changes I'd like to make though. First off, I'd want it to be locked behind a perk, specifically the Mr. Sandman perk. This is already a reoccurring one for the Fallout games, often allowing the player to kill sleeping targets. Problem is, not only is this an incredibly niche ability, but in Fallout 4 I'm pretty certain that you got 0 XP for doing so, which felt like a bit of a kick in the teeth for using a once in a playthrough ability. By adding takedowns to the Mr. Sandman perk, it makes it a much more worthwhile place to spend a perk point. And because it's called the Mr. Sandman perk, I think the takedown shouldn't kill, but instead just knock the target out. Maybe a later rank of the perk can give you the option to one-shot kill with a takedown, but at least at base, it should just get you to choke out the enemy and put them to sleep. Not only does this fit better with theming for the perk itself, but it's also going to tie neatly with my next point. You can beat Atomfall without killing a single person. I think. Obviously I've not done this myself because I'm incredibly bloodthirsty and enjoy shooting everyone, but in theory you could beat Atomfall without having to kill anyone. A potential no-kill playthrough isn't something that would be entirely new to the Fallout franchise, but it would be new for a Bethesda Fallout game. The reason we haven't seen a truly successful no-kill run for a Bethesda RPG is due to their quest objectives. Every main questline of a Bethesda RPG will at some point tell you to kill someone or something. The game will explicitly be like, "Hey you, do a murder or else you can't advance the story." The closest I've ever come to a true no-kill playthrough of a Bethesda RPG is in Skyrim. I did this whole big challenge run, making sure not to kill anything, even avoiding tricksy tactics like the Frenzy spell, and I was able to make it to the final battle against Alduin. But then, it becomes impossible to actually finish the game. You have to be the one to kill Alduin in order to finish Skyrim's main questline, which makes it impossible to entirely beat the game in a no-kill playthrough. And the reason I'm bringing up Skyrim here is that it's as close as Bethesda have ever got to allowing a player to do a pacifist run, and yet they still failed to actually do that. By making it so that you always have to kill things to get through the game, you're forcing players to focus on combat above all else. Charisma has suffered a lot over the years in the Fallout games, as it's almost always the worst stat to build around, because you typically can't talk your way through quests. If Bethesda took a page from Rebellion's book and just made sure that the main quest never tells you to directly kill anyone, then players could figure out a way to do a pacifist run. Atomfall by no means pushes the player towards this, quite the opposite in fact. The game clearly wants you to be engaging in combat, as most of the mechanics are geared towards battle, but this makes it a great case study for how you can still have a pacifist playthrough without having to completely redesign your entire game. Let's flip the script entirely now. Kill everything! Atomfall lets you kill anyone and everyone, and I love it for that. Just like with the last point, this wouldn't be something new to the Fallout franchise, though it would be new for a Bethesda Fallout game. Bethesda love to mark their NPCs with the Essential tag, making it so you can't get rid of them. And once again, this is another quest design problem. Bethesda makes it so that a lot of quests require NPCs to talk to you, or to perform an action, or just to do something in order for things to progress. In Atomfall, the NPCs aren't the ones who progress quests, you are. Sure, they can send you down the right path with their dialogue, and plenty are quest givers who will provide rewards to you, but the game doesn't make it necessary for you to keep them around in order to get most things done. Sure, if you do kill a character, then that may lock you out of a certain ending or lead, but it doesn't prevent you from finishing the game. And this is what I want from Fallout. Not just because I appreciate the work that goes into designing a game which can be completed with no NPCs left alive, but also because it's great for roleplaying. If I want to play as a brutal raider in my next Fallout game, then being able to get rid of named characters will help so much with that. I don't want to have to keep the good guys around just because they're quest givers. I want to be able to get rid of them because I'm a raider, I've got a gun, and they've got loot I want. We've seen this be accomplished in past Fallout games, and it was done perfectly in Atomfall, so I see no reason for Bethesda not to give this a shot. If you do want to see what a kill everything run in Atomfall looks like, then head on over to my second channel where I'm doing just that. It's been a real blast so far, and really highlights how adaptive the game is. Time to move on to another point now though, scarcity. Atomfall does an exceptional job of limiting the player throughout the entire game. Weapons, crafting components, healing items, inventory space, there are so many ways that the game uses scarcity to make things more challenging in a really satisfying way. Restricting the player is something that is so important in game design, and I think that Atomfall does it incredibly well. Understanding that if we always had grenades to hand or were never at risk of running out of ammo, then combat wouldn't feel as tense, and we wouldn't have to figure out different ways to deal with enemies. Sure, I could just stick with using my Enfield rifle and headshot everyone I see, but there's a pretty strict limit on how many rifle rounds I can carry, which forces me to occasionally use other weapons. This sort of design is something I'd love to see given a little attention in the Fallout franchise, albeit not to as great a degree. I don't want the Fallout games to suddenly take a huge turn to where you can no longer be the little loot gremlin which half the player base is, but I do think a bit of artificial scarcity in a few choice places could be rewarding. Stuff like making it so that the start of the game doesn't have much ammo, so you need to either be cautious with your accuracy, or play around with several different weapons right away. Or certain regions restricting your loadout, like the casinos in New Vegas. I do realise now that about half my points on the list are things that New Vegas has achieved to some degree, but Atomfall does them too, so it still counts. Let's instead move on to something which is much more Atomfall exclusive, leads rather than quests. In Atomfall, you don't have quests or missions which tell you exactly what to do and then mark a spot on the map for you. Instead, you have leads to investigate, little bits of information which can give you hints on where to go and what to do without spelling it out explicitly. The great thing about this is that it stops the player from just doing the boring thing of making a beeline straight towards the quest marker without really giving it any thought as to what they're actually doing. This works in Atomfall because the game is very much structured as a mystery and the overall map size is fairly small. While you could just try and do the exact same thing in a Fallout game, I don't think it will work quite as well. Expecting players to figure out an entire questline from a small hint that Bethesda gives which leads to one specific spot on a giant open world is unlikely to go all that well, but that doesn't mean that the overall philosophy is redundant. Certain quests can be made into mysteries, as the odd hidden quest in a huge open world RPG is fun to see, but even just trying to move a little bit away from the game of follow the quest marker would be an improvement. Maybe give us area waypoints to go after instead. This still gives a player a guiding hand on where to go, without doing 100% of the thinking for them. As a final point on this, I do want to draw attention to the fact that Atomfall lets you somewhat customise this whole thing through the difficulty settings, which is a great way to do things, and could easily be done in Fallout as well. Maybe the easiest difficulty is just pinpoint markers as we normally get. Slightly harder has area waypoints to get you in the right area before you start searching, and the hardest difficulty gives you no map marker at all, instead giving you information in the quest log to point you where you need to go. Alright now, final thing I want Fallout to take from Atomfall, no player backstory. You start off Atomfall by waking up in a bunker, and that's it. You aren't given some long spiel about how you're playing as a scientist for Bard, or as an ex-protocol soldier, or whatever else they could have done. The backstory is left entirely blank, which is a dream for character build makers like myself. By giving a blank slate to work with, the backstory can be whatever you want it to be. This is something that Fallout has never managed. In the very best cases, we know a handful of details about our past, but in the worst cases, we have to experience an entire life before we get to playing the game proper. I like not having a pre-written backstory, as I know I can come up with a better backstory than Bethesda can. Plus, I can change my headcanon backstory on subsequent playthroughs, which is a dream for role-playing. In general, the less we're given, the more we have to work with. And on the role-playing front, I also love that we get a silent protagonist in Atomfall, and how the dialogue system works in general. I do fully expect the next Fallout game to have a silent protagonist, and I have high hopes for the dialogue system in general, as the latest Fallout game does have the best dialogue system of them all, which is kind of crazy to say considering 76 didn't have any player dialogue at all on launch day. The one little extra thing that could be added to the dialogue from Atomfall though are those little mood/tone indicators. These are great for letting you know exactly what the line means, and stop you from getting surprised when your character is treated as being sarcastic or mean, when that's not at all what you were going for. So those were 7 elements from Atomfall which I want Bethesda to pinch and put in the next Fallout game. Let me know in the comments what other things I should have listed, give a like if you agreed with any of my points, and make sure to subscribe for more Fallout content in the future. Oh, and if you're wanting more regular Atomfall content, then don't forget to go and subscribe to the second channel, Bad Company Gaming, as the Kill Everything run is still ongoing. As always, thanks for watching. Sarge out.